one of the things that I see as a big change is I'm not as interested in being who I should be. And it's kind of what you were saying, Tom, is I'm just more interested in just being who I am today and owning that and living that authentically and knowing there's a lot of sides to me. There's sometimes a side that wants to rebel.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
I'm smiling over here because we were just down at dinner and my wife and I were having this conversation. She was so frustrated. She goes, I've just got to control someone. The kids aren't letting me control them. You're not letting me control them. I'm going crazy here. What's a mother to do? I mean, oh, God. It's a good thing we can laugh at that, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's
good that I mean, Jess, that's Jess's emotional sobriety too, because that we identify what it is we're doing. See that of all the times that speaking as a one day at a time recovering control freak, it's like in the old days, I would not have been identifying that I wanted to control. I would just my mantra was always, no, I'm just trying to be helpful.
Yes, that's right. Oh, under the guise of helpfulness, so many hearts are broken.
Our couples therapist, I remember she would roll her chair up closer to me, and she would just say, it's not helpful. I don't get to choose what's helpful. And that's the lesson, right? I don't get to choose what's helpful for you.
Well, we have Joe C. back on the podcast today. The last time we saw him was at the International Conference of Secular AA.
There's a lot to face-to-face conferences. All of the stuff outside of the meeting, the catching up with people, the chit-chatting over a meal, all that sort of stuff. I definitely miss that. But the idea that we can have people from Australia and Poland and Hong Kong and all over North America, South America, we can translate French and English and Spanish and English meetings.
It's amazing.
The technology is just a new way to break down barriers and build bridges. Right. It's great. And your podcast, people totally were buzzing about it. And I wish I could have been there longer, but I was running around dealing with people with their hair on fire all day.
Yeah, I bet you were doing that's where I first got to know you, Alan, when you were doing yours in Andrew's conference. You were so sweet and so accommodating to make time for, in the evenings to do stuff with us, and everybody's coming to you and asking for something. Yeah. It'll test your emotional sobriety.
It definitely does. And everyone's so tense because they all want it to go so well. And they all have their own view of how it should unfold. And it is a big test of emotional sobriety. Anything in AA service. Another idea I had pitched Allen was to one day do something on emotional sobriety and the 12 traditions.
Yes.
Applying service work. Yeah.
No, let's do that next time you come, Joe. We'll be prepared for it then, because when you pitched that to me, I thought that, wow, it is such a nice fit, right? It's a glove in a hand kind of a deal. And it's right on, man. But look, today is what we wanted to focus on today was, I guess the theme is more will be revealed, right? I mean, is that where we're at certain points in time, something may make a lot of sense to us. And then later on, what made sense to us at that time looks so different as we evolve in our recovery, as we continue this journey. And we want to really kind of focus on that, on what that means in terms of emotional sobriety. So, I think it's an exciting topic because, I'm more and more convinced that the issue for us is developmental, not pathological. And that I think that we invoke a lot of pathological ideas about symptoms and stuff that are better explained by just saying, we haven't taken the next step in our development yet. It's not something that's wrong with us. It's we're right. We're not wrong. We just need to keep on the journey.
Because that's one of the things that in in recovery with the big giant capital R, which I think is emotional sobriety with the deeper recovery, we're so trained to think that the word want is just about selfish. I want good things to happen to me, but I want good things to happen for you guys too, and then we get deeper into it is it's not so much about what we want to get, it's what we want to be, who we want to be. And that's where the want is. I want to be a man of integrity.
Ernie Kurtz had this great expression. Yeah, he wrote a lot of prolific things, Not God, A History of Alcoholics Anonymous, and The Spirituality of Imperfection. Mm-hmm. And he said, we must thirst. Where are we going to direct that thirst?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well said. Well said. Now, one of the phenomena that I've been thinking about is this wanting to hold on to things and not wanting things to change.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing. Like, I'll see a couple come to me that are going through a real crisis. And like one of the common statements, well, we just want to go back to a time when we were happy. Mm-hmm. Right? We want to go to a time where we felt really good about each other. And it's a very interesting dynamic to me, because what they often don't see is that the seeds that were being planted at the time that they were, quote, happy have grown into what they're struggling with today. And that, I often tell people, you don't want to go back and save the marriage that you had. You want to jettison that one. And what you want to do is create something that's going to be more robust, that's going to be better for you guys, that's based on a set of ideas and principles and concepts that are going to allow you to enjoy each other more, have more freedom in your relationship, and be able to struggle with issues in a better way. But I think that's true in our recovery too, right? When you first come in, right, it's like, I'm so excited, right? I'm so excited about what I'm discovering. And these little gems that we hear in a meeting, right? Like, it's one day at a time. That was like, oh my God, what a concept, right? I mean, it was like, and now like one day at a time, somebody said, I'm a bit jaded to that thing. For me, it's now come down to one moment at a time. I don't even know if I have a day, to tell you the truth at this age. It's now a moment for me. But, I think these things change, don't they? As we change in our recovery.
Once we find something that works, I completely relate to the tendency to want it to always work, or to expect it to always work. And, for there to be a model that's just like self-sustaining through time.
Well, and it's very human. Robert Keegan, has a book and a whole concept around this where he refers to as the immunity to change. And he does a lot of industrial psychology stuff with big companies and as well as individuals. But I love that idea that we have, just as human earthlings, we have a built-in immunity to change. We have, even change that will be positive. Somebody can suggest change to me and I can feel my heels digging in. I can still do that. And this is one of the things I've gotten to through the whole emotional sobriety process, where I'm paying more attention to my intrapersonal processing. Even I can suggest a really good idea for change and I'll feel my heels digging in. I even resist my own wisdom, because and I want people to know it's natural to resist that. It's okay. We can overcome it. But that goes back to what you were saying, Alan. Let's not make that about pathology. That's being human.
I can share a story of how, I sort of came face to face with my own emotional sobriety in this whole idea of people at, counting days in their journey versus people counting decades in their journey, right? And how that can look different, like damage control versus, actualization, right?
Right.
So I was working the phones, just answering the phones at the local intergroup. Alcoholics would call, some of them are sober, just looking for the meeting, out of town, want to know how to get here or there. And sometimes you get a live one, someone sober curious, someone, I don't know what to do or where to turn. I'm, calling AA. And there would be 3 desks and 3 phones. So we would all sort of be there together. So, if there's more than one call, everyone gets a real person to talk to. And sometimes you're listening to somebody else, right? And I was with someone much newer in recovery than I was. And I could hear that they're talking to a wet one, someone who's still struggling with addiction and is at that a contemplative stage of what should I do? I'm thinking of going to a meeting. And what I heard the person say is, no, that's not how it works. First, we'll find you a detox, and then they'll find you a treatment center, and then the treatment center will take you to a meeting. And if I had opened my mouth, I would have said, that's not how it goes, because I'm relating to my own experience from many years ago when those services weren't available, where people detoxed in the meetings, where we poured anyone we didn't recognize a half a cup of coffee in case they had the shakes halfway through, where people invited people to, supervise them on their own couch as they detoxed, right? But we don't need to, those weren't the glory days. We don't need to do that anymore, right? What he was saying was based on his experience of recovery, which was a contemporary way of dealing with someone in their early stages. And I first I bit my tongue just because I'm so sober, right? And then I started thinking, I'm not right about this. He's right about this. I'm the student, he's the teacher. I'm, sort of getting sort of continuing education on recovery today. And we have to meet people where they're at. And where they're at, it's the here and now, not way back in 1970, whatever, right?
Right.
Well, that's so true, isn't it? I mean, I love your point, Joe, because we're going to take what our experience has been and project it into the now. And and to have an awareness that, look, when we meet someone in the here and now, it just doesn't mean meeting them. It's meeting them in the context, in the contemporary culture that they're living in. And it's a very different thing. Look, most people are being introduced to recovery, not through a 12-step call, but through going to a treatment center.
That's right.
It's a very different culture.
The truth is, it is very natural, again, not pathological. It's just natural that we use ourselves initially as the standard of measure. It's but then on the layer outside of that needs to be that we are aware that we do that, because there are times like what you successfully did in your story, Joe, was interrupted yourself from doing that. You measured it that way. You saw it, because then if we get a chance to pan back and look at it, it's like, what's in this? I like to look at this when we're talking about how we communicate to folks who are farther, farther at the beginning or farther back the path from us. There's not just one way. There's 4 of us sitting here. There's 4 different ways we could guide somebody to recovery. It's like, the truth is, what we could actually, be an interesting study just to study what are the really important things. Well, one of the most important things from my experience of witnessing people coming in to getting help for themselves is having somebody who cares and having somebody who actually seems to know what the hell they're talking about. So they give you some specific direction. That's not the time. We can say that as therapists. It's not the time to sit there and just shoot back a bunch of reflective questions. I don't know. How do you feel about that? It's like, they need guidance. So what is, if you were talking to the same person, you might have gone a different place. So okay, good. You want to go to a meeting? Let's get you to a meeting, and that wouldn't mean he wouldn't show up and he wouldn't find his way to detox. It's just you're helping is the best way you can help.
Exactly. Because that's all we have. And there's this sort of fool's gold idea of time in being some currency that's worth more when it's not. Yeah. I know when we used to go to put a meeting on in the detox, it was this lockdown detox. And our group would go there for like a whole month of Saturdays. And I would someone would say, well, you're going to talk, right, Joe? I go, no, I'm going to chair. Whoever's newest is going to share. They don't want what I have. Nobody is in detox looking for the 40-year plan, right? Nobody wants that, right? Maybe 40 days, right? Share your story. I'll come in and share something later, but share something
40
they can
seconds, 40
identify with.
minutes, right? Yeah, 40 seconds. 40 minutes. I like that. The 40-year plan. No, they're not looking for that, are they?
No.
I had a situation this weekend that may be at the intersection of some of these issues. I went to a men's retreat with my home group, and there was an individual who was really suffering in the group because he hadn't been through his steps yet, or he's several years sober, and he's struggling to get through his steps, and he had a lot of trauma associated with like his intense religious upbringing that made it difficult for him to made the language some of the religious language in the steps tough for him to tolerate. And this was a situation that tested my emotional sobriety, I think, because I was trying to relate to him how I'm a pretty secular person, and my higher power is people, fellowship, be that the fellowship of the rooms or family and friends, the people that depend on me, that I am letting down, that I cannot show up for if I'm loaded and not sober. And anyway, a guy interrupts me from across the table and says, well, that'll only get you so far, and for like a moment, I kind of like my I guess, I don't know if I could call my ego jumped up in my head and said, made me want to kind of puff my chest out and say, well, it's got me this far. I don't know how much, but I mean, I suppose like I do have a fear when when I listen to some of, people with quite a bit of time, and they've got this particular way that they've done it. And they, can relate to me with a lot of vulnerability about moments where they went astray, and they had to kind of like get it back. And of course I want to, I'm furiously like scribbling notes in my head, like how can I like avoid this and that, and get the time that they've got. But all we have is today, I guess, and there is no one way to do it, and all I know is what's worked for me so far. And I'm just trying to listen as best I can to all the input that I'm getting from different people in these recovery spaces, and make the best decisions I can.
Well, I appreciate that, Patrick, because that brings it. We're three old guys sitting here talking about this, but from your perspective, you're talking about what it's like to seek and listen and try to absorb what the lessons that are there, what's there. And one of the things that you and I and Allen have talked about, and I have a feeling that Joe is, I'm pretty sure Joe is much like Allen and I in the fact that he's not perfect. just a wild guess.
Thanks for noticing.
But one of the things that we've had, and I wish I could quote a specific example, but just there have been times where you have said things, sometimes on the air and off the air, but where you have made what I thought was, and I think Allen has too, is like sort of this really positive assumption about something we have mastered in our lives, and both of us are going, no. No, that's and then we weren't saying we're just still on by the skin of our teeth, but it's like, no, that still is an issue for me. Just that the control stuff or whatever it happens to be. It's not even about whether I'm going to pick up a drink or not. It's just about my, for me, a lot of times it's that control stuff. It's like no, I want to, or with that guy, if I'd been in the room where the guy said that'll only get you so far. I mean, I'm over here in Nashville, Tennessee. I heard you say that from California, and my rebellious self just jerked up and said, oh yeah, and it's like, yeah. And you did a great job of just kind of monitoring that and kind of holding yourself back and staying in the experience.
I don't believe, and I don't know what's in this guy's thoughts, but I don't think that he was trying to antagonize me. Or, I mean, I do think that his comment was probably coming from an earnest place of, this is what, there's a certain thing that works for him. And, maybe it won't work for me. And he's trying to stop me from sliding off a cliff. That's my interpretation anyway. So.
Yeah, any of these ideas are going to be different for everybody and different at different stages of our own recovery. What realizing nobody is coming for me meant in early sobriety means something very different than it does now. And that's the conversation you were talking about, right? You needed a practical something to grab onto, and it was the people in the program, fellow addict, one alcoholic talking to another. It's higher power, not highest power. We don't need to figure out the way the universe works. We just need to help each other stay sober, right? And then someone else is talking about looking at it from a different worldview, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it does go to this point of, the way we communicate these differences. It's so interesting that, and I find myself do this at times, a lot less today than I did before. I don't need to put what you're doing down to talk about what I'm doing. See, and unfortunately, I see so much of this going on in the program. We think that somehow putting what somebody else is doing down is going to somehow help them be more open to a new possibility. But like, you were saying, Tom, and your first reaction, I think, was right on. I want to rebel to that idea, man. How dare you? Put down what's got me to the place that I'm at in my life right now. You see, I think that's part of what you were feeling. I don't know if that's ego, if that's just a statement of where the reality for you. Yeah, there may be something next for me, but this is of value, man. I've never had this much time before in my life, and this is what's got me here. Will it take me to where I need to go next? I don't know. I haven't gotten to next yet. That's coming, right? That's still going to be revealed to me. That's still going to be part of my journey. But see, I think it's that. So that point that you made in terms of the process of communication is very important. Is paying attention to how do we talk to each other, about our differences. You see that. So let's just go back to the emotional sobriety thing. Early on for me, in my undifferentiated consciousness, which it was a very immature consciousness, I would have to be right and you would have to be wrong for me to feel okay.
Right.
I mean, that was so wired into my behavior. I had to be the best. I had to be right. You had to be wrong. I mean, that's the way that I buoyed up my self-esteem. Now, was that real self-esteem? I wouldn't call that self-esteem today. I would call that, having to be better than, right? It's that old game where kids play with whose hand's on top, right? And if you get your hands on top, you win. And I had always this idea that if I won all the time, that I would, that made me a good, that gave me self-esteem. Well, today, I don't get my self-esteem out of that. Today, I wouldn't feel good about doing that to somebody else. That's
take it a little bit deeper into this emotional sobriety stuff too, because we all are familiar with that right. We need the contrast to be right kind of thing. It's exclusion instead of inclusion. It's like, the truth is, I'm just going to use that because it's easier to talk in examples, more clear, I think, to use the example of this fellow who said something that pissed me off in the meeting that I wasn't even in, which says something about my it was really, it really does make the point. The point is, even if I was sitting in the room, what I'm responding to is not that guy. It's responding to some guy, some interpretation that I have laid on that, which is based on the stuff you just described, Alan, that I come out of a system in which I'm hopefully it's one of my list of recovering froms, so that it's not, so moving toward inclusion away from exclusive thinking. It's like, but the truth is, it's so easy for me to project that onto something and that's an easy thing to project it onto, because it's it may be that for that guy, but it doesn't, that's where the emotional sobriety, he doesn't, this is a strange way to say it, but he doesn't matter in terms of how I'm taking care of myself at that point. The point is I need to realize this power struggle is inside me, not with that guy over there. And it's going to get nowhere if I go to bed tonight in a fantasy, power struggle with the guy that said something in a meeting that I wasn't in, but I could have done that years ago.
Well, and even to take that a step further, see, I used to think when people would share that stuff that they were trying to be helpful. Now, maybe in their minds they were, but today, to me, being helpful means staying in closer contact with someone if I'm giving them feedback and seeing, hey, what did that mean to you? How was that for you? Did that give something to you, or did I take something away from you, or is that how you experienced what I said to you? You see, that to me, so that's the evolution of consciousness. I was thinking about another one. Here's another one that was interesting. There was, and I'm sure you guys, and I still see it going on today. You even hear it in our meetings on Thursday nights, that emotional cutoff is the best way to deal with a relationship that is toxic, quote unquote. You remember that book? Was it Susan Forward that wrote Toxic People or something like that? And you just cut them off. It was like, if somebody's toxic in your life, you cut them off, right? That's the solution. As though that somehow was going to help us function better. And what it turns out today, I don't believe that at all. I believe if you're having trouble with someone in your life, regardless of what they're doing, I'm not saying that they're angels. I mean, there's devils out there too, right? I mean, I'm not saying that. But if there's trouble, I think of that more as my trouble on holding on to myself, not what they're doing.
No, the frame for that, let the toxic person be the teacher.
Yes, that's it. That's a shift in my consciousness. Before, when I first came into program, you stayed around the people that were healthy and you got rid of the toxic people in your life.
Stick with the winners.
Yeah, you stick now. I don't know. I mean, we're all trying to be winners in our own way.
Exactly, everybody. We're at different stages.
We're at different stage. Even when I was drinking and using, that was my best attempt to figure things out in my life at that point. It wasn't that I was campaigning to be a loser. It was I didn't have any options that were better available to me at that point in time.
Right.
I was listening to Patrick tell this story, and I could picture myself talking to this new person and someone else butting in with their devil's advocate, bumper sticker thing. And now I'm going to react to what I assume the new person, how they're responding to what this person said. And
you're right. Oh, that's so good.
And I don't even know, right?
You're in two different people's heads at that point. It's like, absolutely. That's beautiful.
That's good, Joe. You're right.
And the best thing
I was in three people. I was in Patrick's head. I was in that guy's head, and I was in the newcomer's head.
What's the Beach Boys song? I get around, round.
Three-part harmony.
You're questioning this idea of just the shut off as if you cut the toxic person off and you have no more. You've taken care of your problem. We're not saying. I don't think you're saying. We're not saying. Oh no, you need to spend more quality time with toxic people. It's like no. It's not. Again, it's the inclusion rather than exclusion. It's like no, just take that in. No, you spend time with people you want to spend time with. If if it's not good with you to if you end up feeling bad when you spend time with somebody, then probably you want to spend less time with them. But what we're talking about is a way of thinking about this that takes us basically out of multiple. What we're saying is multiple people's heads and getting back into our own, so we can figure out what I have one of my little talk about bumper stickers, my little nutshell things. I have a card that says the first part of any problem that I have to solve is that which is between me and me. And it's I challenge myself, I challenge my clients to say, let's see if we can define that first. It doesn't mean I don't have interpersonal issues I may need to work out with you guys, but I need to see if I can identify the me and me in difficulties first. because that's growing from, and that's to me what a lot of emotional sobriety, that's growing from the inside out.
Well, look, what on a Thursday night we've been looking at step 4, and this last Thursday I read that little part from step 4 that Bill wrote that says, of true partnerships we knew very little. And see, I think that's that humility, right? That I hear I hear a lot of that in you, Joe. You have that sense of humility. I'm not right all the time. I hope I'm developing a little of that in my life at this point too. But I think that that's so true, because a lot of the things that I thought were part of a partnership really were not. They were an anti-partnership behavior on my part. I diminished the relationship. I did not enhance my relationships or my encounter in relationships. And, I think that that's one of the things that's exciting for me is, if we think of emotional sobriety as a relationship, like you said, Tom, first me and me, and then me and you, and me and the
outward,
in the world, and me and my concept of a higher power, whatever that may be. If I think of it in terms of those relationships, I can learn a lot by examining every one of those things. Of examining what's my relationship like with myself today. And that's what I love, our discussion about self-esteem. It's our evaluation of ourselves, how we think about ourselves, right? That's why it's such an important thing. And there's
it's healthy self-criticism. It's we're trying to, Joe, lately we've been trying to salvage the term self-criticism, because I've realized for me it really got tossed in with self-condemnation, and so it gets to be where we got to have some pretty thick skin to do this recovery stuff, and we need to be able to critique ourselves, and we need to be able to take some criticism from each other.
Well, let's go around and say that. How did our relationship with ourselves change from where we first were when we came in to today? And how did our relationship with others change?
The way that my relationship with myself changed from
when you first came into rooms to today.
I don't need to proceed with action from how I'm feeling, or the way I'm feeling does not need to dictate how I behave. And
so that's now. So when you first came in, what was that like for you?
If I was having a bad day, I'd behave badly. If I was having a good day, maybe I'd be on my best behavior. So I think that's been a significant upgrade in recovery.
Okay.
And then as far as the way that I treat others, I'm a lot better at listening, and I think I'm a little less reactive, and I'm better, I think, at just kind of sitting with the things people are sharing with me without immediately imposing my own kind of ideas on top of it.
Alan, I think I could take that question, the way you framed that, and do it sort of like those Nathaniel Branden sentence stem things, where I could answer it. It'd probably be that I'd just go deeper and deeper. I could answer it multiple times because I'm realizing that, oh my God, I could do it this way, that way. But the one I got was that without knowing this at all, without any insight whatsoever, I think, about this, the before is I had to be right. It didn't mean it wouldn't mean I was right. It meant I was measuring myself by whether I was right. So my defense system was all set up to make me right. And I mean, and I'm amazed when I look back at the bullshit that I was pulling certainly in my drinking and drugging, but even in my early recovery, that I was still holding out as, I'm right about this. And the after is that learning's important, being right's not. It's like, it's just, am I learning? And I think the other thing I'd love about what is new for me, and this has even improved significantly since we've been doing, since we started doing all this stuff when the COVID shutdown happened, Alan, is I am such a more natural and effective self-observer than I was. I'm not so keen to always, what Patrick was saying, always take action and lean back and just listen and soak it all in. And it's like, that's not always, but I wasn't that way at all before.
Like Tom, I needed to either impress you or impress upon you. I thought that was so important.
That's good.
And what I have
love it.
learned, especially with not just new people, but others, people don't need to be told. They need to feel heard. Like no one's at a 12-step meeting or any sort of peer-to-peer group. No one's sitting in front of a counselor if they don't already know the shit's already hit the fan, right? They don't need to be told. They need to feel heard. And when I see two people talking at the literature table, like the old timer and the newcomer, I can tell how well it's going by who's doing the talking. If the newcomer's talking, it's going great. And
wow.
it's probably going to be most effective. People need to feel heard. And when I'm encouraging newer people to help even newer people, like you don't need to say the right thing. You need to listen. That's what got me sober. I felt sincerely heard at AA meetings. Wow. And I'm lucky to say I wasn't often cut off by some smart ass remark. You know, in most cases, I could find someone who really cared and really empathized and would really listen. And that I came back for more.
That's beautiful.
You know, I was thinking for me is when I go back, when I walked in these rooms, my self-esteem was really, really in the gutter. I mean, the way I evaluated myself was always to fall short. That I had all these concepts of who I was supposed to be okay. And, you know, today I realize is that it was, Bill calls it an impossible way of life. These concepts I had were so ungrounded. I mean, so poorly grounded in reality. They had nothing to do with reality. They had to do with fantasies. And I was trying to live up to a fantasy and I've always fell short. And so one of the things that I see as a big change is I'm not as interested in being who I should be. And it's kind of what you were saying, Tom, is I'm just more interested in just being who I am today and owning that and living that authentically and knowing there's a lot of sides to me. You know, there's a me that really wants to cooperate and sometimes a side that wants to rebel. And if I can just live who I am openly, the overriding part of me is I want to cooperate. Sometimes I don't know how. Sometimes I don't know how to do that and keep a sense of myself. So that's the kind of thing in terms of that. In terms of relationship with others, man, early on, it was all about me. I looked at every interaction in terms of what was it saying about who I was, how people felt about me. Like you were saying, Joe, right? I wanted to either impress or impress upon, you know, I wanted you to be impressed with me, right? I wanted, my self-esteem was so dependent on how you saw me and what you thought of me. And so I was so focused and vigilant about that. And today, like you said, I have a lot more room for other people. I can listen to them and I can hear who they are and not make it about me. And I am so much better at that than I've ever been in my whole life, is creating room for other people. I don't do that perfectly. You know, if my wife got on, she'd say I'm full of shit by telling you guys that, because that's where it probably shows up, where I'm still, you know, on the learning curve a lot in terms of that, although I'm much better at it today.
Well, Al, that's where we go back to what you and I have talked about before, is it's important that you and I have this in common, that we've both married people that love us very much, but they're not impressed. You know, and it's like, sometimes I think I've told you, sometimes I wish Dee Dee was a little more impressed, but it's like she's not. It's like at all. But I know she loves me.
Do Dee Dee and Jess kind of share notes together, or is it?
I think they probably have a lot in common how they are in relationship that way. Because you know, the day that I met you, is one of those stories. I won't tell the long version of the story, but but the thing is, we were at the ranch over in the director's office there, and Dee Dee was there because she was the equine therapist for the ranch and developed that program, and I was there because I was what I call the consultant who was never consulted, which I later found out was the definition of consultants. It's like, but they paid me, so that's okay. That's
Well, it was paid but never consulted.
but I said I told you, we were talking about the equine therapy, and I said a couple of things about Dee Dee because I am quite impressed with her, and you said you said, well, Dee Dee, tell me something about Tom's work, and I don't remember how she did it, but she just completely passed over the question entirely. She had nothing to say about me. I remember it hurt my feelings. I just met you. I was trying, talk about what Joe was talking about. I was trying to impress. I thought, hey, I like this guy. I'd like to impress him. It's like it was just sort of a little, just almost a little dismissed thing, and that was all over. So anyway, that's the story of how you and I even met for the first time, was witnessing.
You know what that told me about you guys is that she was comfortable enough with you that she could do that. And feel free enough to do that, and that told me what a great relationship you guys.
Yeah. Well, I didn't feel that at the time, but yes,
that was how it registered to me. I'm sitting there going,
"That's nice." Yeah.
He doesn't have to beat this guy's drum,
That's right. That's right.
To be his cheerleader. I mean, she's okay being who she is. I mean, I thought that was cool that you guys had that space.
Hey, listen, here's how far we've come. I developed a new card trick earlier today, and Dee Dee was patient enough. I said she's not a fan of my card tricks either. It's like she sees me come in with a deck of cards. She goes, and I said, "Can I show you a card trick?" And she said, "Yes, she did." And she actually told me that she was impressed with the card trick. So.
Wow. Thanks.
How about that? Yeah.
I know the right question to ask her next time.
What's your favorite card trick?
How are his card tricks going?
How's card tricks? That's right.
It's getting better.
They're more tangible. Yeah. There's moments in time where we've heard something forever, but then you can tell the story about when something clicked. Some little lesson had clicked with you. I remember I was years and years ago. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was talking about this woman who didn't like me, and I knew she didn't like me, and I was going, oh, man, she doesn't like me at all. And he interrupted me in the middle of all this stuff, and he said, "Do you like her?" And I went, "No," and then just kept talking, just kept going, and then he didn't say a thing. He was a good listener, Joe. It's like then I just stopped myself dead in my tracks and realized what I just said. It's like, oh, it was that. Oh, I needed her. I was demanding that she like me, but I didn't like her. So why was that? It's like, I don't know that I put anything together that day, but I recognized something was off in terms of what I thought I needed to be okay, and I didn't.
Yeah, we need to hear ourselves say it.
Yes.
I remember one of the little wisdoms of the room when I was new. They didn't read the promises, and I'm neither for nor against that. Do whatever you want in your own group. But they would close the meeting and say, not that we have a solution for every one of your problems. That's not what they said. They said, if you came with a problem, please don't leave with a problem. A problem shared is a problem halved. And just the idea of getting it out, right? It doesn't solve the problem, but it relieves the tension to carry on one more day, right?
I'll tie what you just said back into the story of the suffering guy at the retreat. I saw him sitting with a number of other men that were at that lunch with us, but that were just there at the retreat. I saw the suffering man talking a lot, and then the person he was sitting with listening. And I think that whether or not they had the right words or the right wisdom, they walked with him into whatever it is that he was facing. To me, that's what matters most, or that's what seems to do the most.
So listen, the message to our listeners is your maturity is going to evolve if you stay pressed up against this process. And we encourage you to stay pressed up against it as gently and compassionately as possible, because beating yourself up and being harsh on yourself, is not the best path for any of us, even though each and every one of us in this room have done that from time to time, and you will do that as well. But if you stay the course, the big thing is don't buy into the idea that where I'm at, I'm always going to be at. That what's true now will always be true forevermore. It will not. And if you stay around here, you will change. If you continue to try to digest some of these concepts we talk about, you will change. And you've got no idea what that's going to look like. But I'll tell you, it's going to be a hell of a trip. And it's going to take you into some cool places. I keep going back to when you read to us from Dr. Zeus. Oh, those places you'll go, Joe.
Absolutely.
Oh, those places you'll go. Right.
Yes, you will succeed. You will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed.
That's right. That's right. There it is, you guys. So, Joe, I'm looking forward to our next time together, and we'll start to get into the traditions and emotional sobriety.
Yes.
And bring
That'll clear the room.
Right. That'll. Hey, I gotta put a shout out to my sponsor Tom today, who celebrated 54 years being clean, and just shared.
Wow.
I sent you guys, some of you guys, a Facebook post. I'll send it to you too. Joe, that he just wrote about his experience with Tom Catton, a good friend of ours who recently passed away.
Yeah.
And it's just the stories, man. I mean, the incredible experiences we have in recovery are just phenomenal. And he's got a bunch of great ones.
Well, he's got a ripple effect that is just amazing.
He's helped NA grow all over the world.
Tend your life, tend your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.